Hi everyone. So tonight I am doing a long-awaited book review of The Atlas Six by Olivie Blake. This is a self-pub book that I found off of Goodreads a while ago, and I know that it's been making its rounds on BookTube recently. I will be a little bit of a hipster and say I found it first, but I loved this book, guys. I gave it a 4 out of 5 star rating. I think there was a little bit of room to grow. There were a couple choices I did not, agree with, and just like a few little things that I just wasn't like over the moon about. But otherwise, I thought this was a really, really solid book. It was entertaining. It kept me reading through the night. Like, I really had fun with this one. And if you are a fan of fantasy, sci-fi, and dark academia, and you enjoy books that sprinkle a little LGBTQ representation and BIPOC representation, this book might be for you. So, I was drawn to this book because it involves the Library of Alexandria, not to be confused with the Library of Alexandria. Thank you very much. Now, I am a huge sucker for anything that has to do with the Library of Alexandria. Like the idea that all of this knowledge was destroyed that we could have had and all this history, like it breaks my heart whenever I think about it. And this is an alternate history in which there is a secret society called the Alexandrian Society that basically hid away the knowledge in the Library of Alexandria so that what happened in our world didn't actually occur. So, in this story, it's an urban fantasy where magic exists out in the world. There are people called Medians that use magic and actually, can go to college for it to fine tune their abilities and learn more about magic and research it and all that kind of stuff. So our main characters are 6 people who have graduated from magic college or are using magic in their life. They are Medians, and they are contacted by a mysterious man who comes to them and says, I would like you to come with me and be a part of an initiate class to see if you can become a member of the Alexandrian Society. Nobody knows what this is because it's a secret society. And they follow this mysterious man to this mansion in the middle of London where they are going to be staying for a year to research magic in this giant library and study and hone their skills and just try to impress the people of this society so that they can earn a spot. Now, 6 students come in. Only 5 will be initiated into the Alexandrian Society. They don't really know what that means, but they'll find out. Now, how do I want to start with this? I'll start with the magic system. It feels like a soft magic system that wants to be a hard magic system. And I am interested to see how that progresses in the second book. And I say that it's a soft magic system trying to be a hard magic system because we don't really know how the magic works, but it is steeped in real life science. I loved the magic system in this book. I am someone who really, really loves hard magic systems. There's a reason I love Brandon Sanderson, and his books are some of my favorite. There's a reason he's my favorite author, because I like magic systems where I can say, this is why this works, and these are hard and fast rules. That doesn't really exist in this magic system, but physics concepts, quantum mechanics, chemistry, all of that is involved in the research that these people are doing to try to figure out ways to use their magic for different things. And so there are a lot of conversations in this story that include physics terms and that talk about the science behind the magic that they're doing. I really loved that. For me, as someone who has a science background, I think that being able to see that Olivie Blake did her research and that the science she's talking about does exist and the concepts she's discussing, she's talking about correctly. Like, I loved that. That being said, I had to sometimes reread paragraphs because I wasn't 100% sure what they were talking about. I don't think it was because I didn't have the knowledge of the science. I think that's just how those conversations are supposed to be. You're supposed to try to wrap your mind around this. And I don't think that people who do not have a science background should be discouraged from reading this book. I think that it is accessible for everyone, even if you don't know a lot of the science concepts. It's just sort of an extra Easter egg and extra fun for people who do understand that. I always appreciate when authors do their research, especially if they're going to be talking science or medicine or any of that that we use in real life, and that if they're going to be discussing these concepts, they should know. So I really like that. Now, our 6 main characters, I'll just quickly go through them. We have Libby and we have Nico, and so Libby and Nico are both our physical magic users. We have Tristan, and I don't really want to talk about his magical abilities because that is somewhat of a mystery and is an important thing for you to figure out as you read the story. We have Raina, and she is a naturalist, and so she can coax plants and things to grow. And I really enjoy her character. She's kind of no nonsense. She's sort of badass. And like Tristan, her powers are not completely understood. And that's something that you discover and that they figure out as the story goes on. Then we have Parisa, and she is a telepath. She can go into people's heads and manipulate them and kind of figure out their deepest, darkest secrets. She can convince people to tell her things. We have Callum, who is an empath, which is different than a telepath. So Callum can actually get into people's heads and make them feel a certain way. He can make them relaxed. He can make them scared. He can make them paranoid. Like, he can manipulate your emotions. Callum scares me. Danger, Will Robinson, danger. Like, sort of terrifies me. He's a little bit of a sociopath. I do not like Callum's character, not because I don't think he's a good character. He's very well written. I don't like him because he makes me uncomfortable. And when characters make me feel uncomfortable, that's when I know that they're well written, because the intent of the author has come across the page and made me feel something. The character relationships I love so much. I think that Miss Blake has created very realistic interactions between people of this age. They're in this pressure cooker where they're feeling like they have to perform in order to prove themselves for the society, and there's arguments and there's sexual tension. And I will put a disclaimer out there. This is a spicy book. I would say that it is probably, I don't read a ton of spicy literature, but I would put it like a 2 to 3 spice level, because there is sex and there are semi-graphic descriptions of what's happening in the story. So just be aware, if you're someone who does not like spice, this might not be the book for you. However, it's not everywhere. Like, there's, I think, like 3, maybe 4 scenes, maybe a couple more. Just, it's not completely full of it. I didn't feel like it was over the top or being used as like exposition or anything like that. The characters are all sort of my age, to be completely honest, and they're millennials, and they're written like millennials, and you can understand why they make the decisions they do, both the good decisions and the extraordinarily poor decisions that sometimes they make. They're all very unique, and not in the I'm not like the other girls or I'm not like the other boys. Like, they each are their own person. And I have a hard time comparing characterization in some stories, because if you see my other videos, you know how much I love like Daniel Abraham and his characterization of his characters in his story. But that is in such a different setting than this. However, I think that Olivie Blake does a good job with her characterization. She might not be up on the same level as Daniel Abraham, but it's a lot more well fleshed out than I have read in a long time for a book that is, a dark academia novel with this sort of like emphasis on relationships between characters. So some of our characters actually knew each other before they entered into this story. 2 of them went to college with each other, and they have such an intriguing relationship. I love the dynamic that Blake wrote between these characters, and they were these sort of nemesis in college, and they've always kind of been drawn together, but in this like fraught and fighting way. There's a quote in here, if I can find it, that describes them. And it says, they were binary stars trapped in each other's gravitational field and easily diminished without the other's opposing force. So they have this crazy, odd, tension-filled relationship, and the way that they're written in this story, like that relationship between the two of them is my favorite. And it's kind of up in the air what that relationship is. They kind of hate each other, but it's like a love-hate, and the relationships in this story are very blurry. I don't want to talk about romantic relationships in this because I don't want to give anything away, because whether or not there are romantic relationships, I feel like it's a little bit too much of a spoiler. I would say that this is an incredibly character-driven book. And by the end, like when I was getting ready to film this video and I sat here, I like to type notes just so I have sort of a little bit of a skeleton to go off of. I sat here and was like, what happened in this book? What was the plot of it? Like, what actually happened? Because this is the type of book where everything happens, but also absolutely nothing happens. There's not a ton of action because it's following these characters during their studies. And so there's not going to be battle sequences or things like that you find in a lot of fantasy books, because this is not that type of story. But it's all about the characters and their interactions with each other and their relationships with each other, and how they figure out how they fit together in this environment, this new environment that they've been put in. I really enjoyed that. If you liked The Blade itself, that's a very character-driven book too. I know that these have very different feels to them, but I felt like it was kind of like The Blade itself, where you have all these character interactions, but there's not a ton of movement and plot. Once you get to the end of it, though, you see where the plot is going. And that's why I'm so incredibly looking forward to the second book, which I hope will come out, when she says it's going to. I had so much fun with this book. There's so many themes and ideas that they touch on. Like I said, there's time travel involved and quantum mechanics. So you have that hard science. There's the idea of what is autonomy and can you trust your own thoughts. There's a lot of morality and where that comes into play when it comes with discoveries and research in science and in magic. Do you bend your own rules if it means making these discoveries? Where is that line? And then the idea of what is knowledge? Is knowledge something that should be owned and controlled by certain people? Do people have the right to do that and keep that from others? Just like with the Library of Alexandria, is it okay that they, in the Alexandrian society, have kept this knowledge away from other people? And this is explored in an interesting way in the story because, like I said, there is a library inside this mansion and it's controlled by the Alexandrian society, and the library controls what they allow them to see. It's kind of mysterious how it does it. It's magical, but you also don't know if it's being controlled by a person. So it's like, why are they only letting people look at certain things? Why are they limiting the knowledge available to them? And then the last thing that I think is a really interesting concept that is talked about in this story is the concept of starving. And now as you read this story, I hope that you remember that I say this and that I mentioned this because it was something that was striking to me in the story, the idea of starving. So there's a quote that says, "We're all starving, but not everyone is doing it correctly. Some people are taking too much, making themselves sick, and it kills them. The excess is poison. Even food is a poison to someone who's been deprived. Everything has the capacity to turn toxic. It's easy, so fucking easy to die. So the ones who make themselves something are the same ones who learn to starve correctly." And when I read that, it makes me think of control and power. And it's these quotes that seem more innocent, that seem very obtuse in this story that I think are the most important and I think are going to come up in the following books. So this concept of starving, and you can only appreciate something once you have been deprived of it, once you know what it's like to not live with it. So it's like if every day was a sunny, beautiful 70 degrees day, would you appreciate it as much as if you had spent half the year in rain and snow and slush and now you have a beautiful sunny 70-degree day? Like, do you appreciate that as much? Can you appreciate this magic? Can you appreciate this power and this knowledge if you've always had access to it? Or will you not only appreciate it more, but understand better how to use it because you have lived without? I don't know. I really like this idea. I think this book was really great. There are some really funny quotes and funny scenes in the story. There is humor to kind of bring that dark academia atmosphere up a little bit. Now, the very end, I will mention a couple cons of the book that I think some people might not enjoy. Um, like I said, it's a very character driven book, so the plot of it does not stick out crazy. If you do not like stories that are very character driven, if you're someone who needs heavy in your face plot, this might not be the book for you. Like I said, there's all that science in there, so if you're not someone who enjoys that in your stories, you might not like this book. And the structure of this book is a little odd. I did not mind it. I thought it was actually kind of interesting, but the book is split into, I believe, 5 parts, and each part contains one chapter from each of the 6 main characters' points of view. And they're all written in third person, but it really just focuses on the viewpoint of that one person. So you see 6 different chapters, 6 different points of view that cover the same span of time. So it's like a bunch of layers at once. And then you move to the next part and it's the same amount of time, but you see it 6 times in a row. I liked it because it felt like you were never missing out on anything. You didn't really have any of these time jumps, and you got to see everything that was happening in the building at once through everyone's, eyes. One last con that I do feel like I need to mention is that there are some heavy themes that are discussed in this book, and there's discussion of different types of traumas. So I would say that there are a lot of things that could be triggering for people. Some of those concepts include rape and sexual assault, self-harm, psychological abuse. So if you are sensitive to any of these topics, I would definitely look up trigger warnings for the story before you decide to read it. I know there are certain people who would rather know going in that stuff like this is discussed, and I know that there's some people who would rather know ahead of time so they can avoid reading things with those concepts in them. So I just wanted to warn you about that in case you are someone who wants that kind of warning beforehand. Now, all in all, I really enjoyed this book. I'm glad that I found it. I hope more people pick this up and read it because it's not a super long book and it's very accessible. It is an adult fantasy story for sure, definitely based on the themes and the ages of our characters and what goes on in the story, but it's written in a way that the prose feels like sort of like that new adult prose where it's very accessible to read. I didn't find it difficult to get what she was trying to tell me. It's definitely not purple prose. It's not very flowery. It's very direct in its descriptions. So I hope you guys have a wonderful night. And if you've read the Atlas 6, let me know. I would love to discuss this with people because there's just so much that goes on in here. I really like to hear your opinions on this story. So have a wonderful night. Thank you so much for liking, subscribing, and commenting. It means oh so much to me, and I will see you later. Bye.